Micron stock has been following the trajectory and the situation price action as what Nvidia did from the early onset of the AI run up, and that made Nvidia one of the most sought after company to own the shares of. Micron has been on a really strong run for quite some time, but it is still way short of the highest range in these scenarios that Nvidia made. With Micron earnings coming out in just a couple of days, that is on Wednesday, 24th of June, can we expect Micron to get another catalyst boost after earnings and continue its road and journey to new highs? Let's talk about all of that in this video. I'll take you over some high-level articles talking about Micron, its how future is looking like with the demand and the supply, and how with where Nvidia was. I want to show you at this time when where Nvidia was, how and what made Nvidia to keep running up in its stock price, and how can Micron follow the suit. So with that, I want to let you know none of this is any financial advice, only for education purposes, just sharing my opinion. Please do your own thing. Micron has its earnings on 24th of June. Okay. Estimates EPS 20.568. That's quite a lot. I mean, that's your just EPS, okay? And the revenue is 35 billion. Last quarter, they're definitely way higher than what they're going to be projecting. They only, well, not only, that's also quite substantial, 12.20 EPS reported, and revenue was 23.86 billion. Their EPS is definitely more exponentially increasing or rising because they have right now market pricing power, what Nvidia had back in its early onset of the AIs. Right, this is Nvidia. I want to just show you real quick. We'll be talking about and comparing a lot of price action with Nvidia and Micron here. Like Nvidia on the onset from here, like all these increases in EPS and revenue we were seeing right up over here, right in this journey. Now, not just that for Micron here, okay, like that's a quite substantial increase already. But also, if we go over this article real quick, Micron, the chips that Micron manufactures, they are NAND and DRAM, both of them which are required for data storage and for processing also. All right, this is something you would already know if you are a Micron fan by now, if you have been investing in Micron, and if you hold a position. Now, Micron's production capacity has essentially been sold out this year, and what it can deliver to clients will determine how the market views the stock. Micron is building another facility, just like the very scenarios that all this, when semiconductor shortage was happening, government was investing in Intel. There were more factories being built around for chip production and all. The very same thing we are seeing, or I should say for the semiconductors, the very same thing we are seeing with the memory chip shortage. So, and they say that even with this new facility coming up, there is still a lot of runway until 2027 for such demand to persist with data center requiring these chips. All right. So, and that's what right now the thesis is behind all this Micron run, that it has more room to run. Now, can it run more? Well, look, I do want to point out no one knows what's going to happen through the earnings. But when we'll get to the technicals, as for what we are watching, as if we see a gap up or gap down, where will the price structure break if that has to happen? I'll get to that point in just a moment. I want to first cover one more article just so you know how much year-over-year growth we are really seeing here. Revenues and EPS year-over-year growth 268% and 932% respectively. That's quite a lot. And as you can see, EPS growth is much more here, 932%. And that's why, because they have pricing power right now, just what Nvidia had back in those days, right? Now, while I talked about that, let's get to Nvidia stock here for a moment. Let's get to where Nvidia was, and we don't have to worry about the levels here, guys. I haven't put the timeline on my tools back there because we don't need to, but if you're interested to see back where the levels were, my tools, just move the timeline on my tools a little bit back and the levels would show up there, but we don't need for this video on Nvidia those levels to show up. Okay, so this is where Nvidia made its first gap up, right? At now it's split adjusted, but 370 something back then, right? First gap up, it was taken as quite a massive gap up. Everyone was like, wow, right? And it stayed up here for quite some time, right? Like it stayed May until pretty much November, so good amount of months, as if it cannot go much further higher. And then earnings after earnings, next run up, right? Why? Because Nvidia, there was no one catching up to Nvidia, and every time there was just more demand and less supply. That's when government was really trying to also increase these factories, and so many other companies were trying to build these factories and increase their production capacity and all. Then the next consolidation, no one thought it can go any much further higher, right? It went higher. All right, it went up here. Yes, then it stayed here in 2024 for quite some time in that consolidation, right? It stayed here from May 2024 all the way to June 2025 for a year. Just when everyone thought it can't go any much further higher, it went more higher. Then it stayed here also for now 8 months, went much higher. No one thought it's gonna go much higher up, right? Because Nvidia had what no one was able to fulfill. Right now, it's a little bit slowing down Nvidia in its price action because AMD is catching up. But it gave so much of runway to Nvidia for 2-3 years, 3-4 years, I should say by now, that there was just no one. Micron is that in that state, right? We do have like along the ways like SanDisk and all, but we'll talk about that later. SanDisk is also on a really great run up, but Micron is definitely is in a very beautiful place here when it comes to its price action. A lot of correlation with Nvidia that we see here in the way the situation was and how Micron is also able to capitalize on those very situations. Now, I'm not saying these run-ups would last forever, but as long as we don't see any, demand shortage, it's really not, at least for now, for a few months, looks like it's at least the sentiment is gonna slow down. I don't think so that's going to happen. But however, let's talk about the price action now, because we have to trade the price action. Do you want to be holding something for a year if it's just gonna go sideways, like for like Nvidia, how it did? Yes, those times were troublesome, or just not money not doing anything. Yes, it makes the next move, but until when will that continue, right? So you do have to still understand the price action. So the way the Micron is right now in the price action, guys, it's still bullish. Okay, now Micron here is going to stay in the bullish structure from where we are, as we are above 1088. That's your start of the week. Now along the ways, you are already seeing some zones that I have highlighted, that when I talk to my members or I do videos here, I keep providing trailing areas. Now Micron here for us, this consolidation that I was just showing on Nvidia, like Micron hasn't been late for us. Even if you caught up here at 364, that's been a great move as well, right? There are some drawings you are seeing on Micron even from down here. I used to talk, if you remember back then as well, Micron, but then only for the members. This became a talking stock when price action was going quite good strong with all these chip shortage sentiment. And even if a position has been started at 363, it has still given you like quite a lot of gains, right? What, 3-4 times your money. Now Micron is still in the bullish structure, and your overall structure support can be still taken at 965. Now as long as we are above that, even after earnings, let's say we see any gap down but we stay above 965 area, nothing to worry. All right, Micron will just stay bullish. Okay, if we lose 957, there is if we lose after earnings, gap down happens 957 below, then we have a room to go into that consolidation phase a bit, because what that tells us, the gap down after earnings, what that tells us is that something came out in guidance that has spooked the long-term investors or the big institutional investors, and that's why you are seeing that gap down, market repricing. But I don't think that's gonna really like plummet it down. It's just that market is trying to, because what you are seeing is already priced in. Okay, so if guidance comes out really awesome, that something blows people off their chair, quite an analogy I just made up, but that's what will fuel it, right? Otherwise, if market says, oh well, we already priced in so much, but something tells us now in their guidance that someone is catching up or their sales or growth may go sideways, then only I see a gap down below 955. If that happens, that's where it's going to go more in the consolidation and stabilization phase until the next earnings. All right, the only problem in the gap down is that if something, which is really hard to say because everything is so optimistic around these purchases, and no other company, no other their buyers have come out and said that, oh, we don't need these chips anymore, right? So that's why the gap down below 823 is very tough to imagine. If that happens, then it's broken, then it's kaboom. All right, but that's very hard to imagine. But that's the scenario if gardens fall short of something, which right now I'm not seeing any indications through any of their buyers, because we don't have to take sellers here for their words. We have to look for their buyers. Are the buyers showing any signs of slowness? Because sellers will always be like, yes, there's a lot of demand for our product because it's in their best interest, but it's the buyer that you have to listen to. And none of the buyers so far have said that they don't need these type of products, right? Or they're slowing down, right? So wherever you see big players are increasing their capex, right, which for now is hurting their stock prices, but eventually I believe they will be fine because they're behemoths. It's just the near term now. So what if we gap up now? Yeah, even if we, let's say for any reason, a little bit of a sideways action, if that even happens, we'll stay overall bullish 1092 and also 960 area. That's so. Now, as if we gap up, guys, okay, be prepared. If we gap up, no one knows how much gap up would happen, but if we gap up, you can try to take some profits, because there is high likelihood after gap up things go sticky for a few days. It's not going to be bearish, but it's always good to take some partial profits. But be prepared, if we gap up, then next couple of days expect things to get a little bit sticky with such an extended stock. If this would have been like down here and then gap up happens, then that's a different story. It can continue its run because it's cheap, market never expected so much of moves, and and that when the buyers just continue already. But when there is already a run up has happened, those gap ups after these earnings may remain sticky for a few days, but it won't make it bearish. It may do a little bit of a gap fill, liquidity grab, but buyers and other institutions would usually hold it because earnings would reprice it, and anything below that gap up is already like a, in the near term, is a discount, and so big players will pick that up with such a positive sentiment. And if in this case the gap up happens, no one knows what's going to happen through the earnings though. Okay, so if you are in a good position, you have a lot of profits, this is also a good time before earnings to a little bit size down your position, take some off the table, just book a little bit of profit. It's always good to do that. You don't have to fully liquidate your position. You also don't have to like even take good lot of position off. You just a little bit, just to be happy, because with Micron, there's likely high likelihood, at least for now, that things will remain bullish. Even through a little bit of a pullback, it will stabilize. There is no structural weakness in Micron, and these type of stocks would just not plummet like that, right? So things are looking really still strong on Micron, and especially when earnings are coming. This was a bit of a worrisome time on Micron, with other a market getting spooked with many other things as well. But once it regained the zones, and I have been telling you this back then, right? Like on Micron, this was the zone that I was telling you that this is once we stabilize it, and I said that 955 above, if we can get, this is the base now, and we are back in the strength, and that's what pretty much happened. And then thereafter we have been in the strength, and so that zone is still a really good base. Going into the earnings, we hold above it, everything will be fine. And other scenarios, I just provided you what to look for. So from the perspective of sentiment, it's very, very strong still on Micron. Going into the earnings, price action is also very strong going into the earnings. Levels I just provided you to watch for any weakness if that has to happen. And as if gap up happens, you know what to do, right? Anyways, guys, that's all I had for you in this video. Big earnings, because Micron will set the sentiment for the industries, not just semiconductors, but because this product is intertwined with many other products, right? So, and semiconductors and these type of chips, they are all somehow right now controlling the whole market. They're affecting the tech stocks, they're affecting the money flow and everything. All right, so anyways, guys, that's all. If you found it helpful and valuable, please hit the like, subscribe, and with that, I'll see you in my next videos. Take care, bye.